The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has reached New York to attend the annual United Nations General Assembly meeting, where the American and the European officials are pressing for a 21-day halt in the fighting between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah to give time for negotiations. Upon landing in New York, Netanyahu said, and I quote, "Israel's policy is clear. We are continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force." Listen in.
אנחנו פועלים כאן בשיתוף פעולה.
במהלך הטיסה נרשמתי איסור בתחום בראש כיתת הכטב"מים, דברים אחרים. העסוקת, המדיניות שלנו היא ברורה. אנחנו ממשיכים להכות את החיזבאללה בכל הכוח, ואנחנו לא נפסיק עד שנפסיק את כל יעדינו, ובראשם השחרת תושבי הצפון לפתחה לבתי.
Earlier, the Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir had threatened Netanyahu that he would withdraw the support of his Otzma Yehudit party from Netanyahu's government and bring down his government if he were to agree to a ceasefire in Lebanon. Following a meeting with the lawmakers from his far-right party, Ben-Gvir argued that pausing the fighting conveys weakness and endangers the security of the Israeli citizens and proves that Israel does not intend to win. Meanwhile, the American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said that there is a risk of an all-out war breaking out between Hezbollah and Israel, and it's added that a diplomatic solution is still viable.
And we now face the risk of an all-out war. Another full-scale war could be devastating for both Israel and Lebanon. So let me be clear. Israel and Lebanon can choose a different path. Despite the sharp escalation in recent days, a diplomatic solution is still viable.
All right, so that was Lloyd Austin there stating that despite the short, sharp escalation that we've witnessed in the last week, a diplomatic solution is still viable. Our correspondent Susan Tehran is, of course, joining us live from New York. Susan, we were just talking a little while back about the American policy, which seems to be completely incoherent, even as it is calling for a ceasefire. It has done very little in terms of using the leverage that the United States has on Israel to try and bring about some kind of a ceasefire in this offensive that Israel is carrying out on Lebanon. Now, Netanyahu at this moment is in New York for UNGA. What is he likely to hear from Joe Biden?
From the Biden administration, he's going to hear the same thing that we are hearing, and it's a bunch of rhetoric. It's not just Israel. It's basically the international community who has lost faith in America's ability to be able to create peace in the Middle East. First, it was to create some kind of ceasefire between Gaza, Hamas, and Israel. Now it's Hezbollah in Israel. And now there's the fear of a wider war in the Middle East region that apparently the United States can't broker any kind of peace. And one of the reasons for that is because, as you mentioned, it is not coherent in its policy. For example, the statement that's put out by the White House says that there has to be some kind of truce, ceasefire, temporary, between Israel and the government of Lebanon. When this is not a situation with the government of Lebanon. What government of Lebanon? This is a situation with Hezbollah and Israel. The reason the United States can't say Hezbollah and Israel because Hezbollah is a state-sponsored terrorism here in the United States. It's considered that. It's on the list of state-sponsored terrorists. So the White House can't come out right and say that we want our ally Israel to negotiate with a state sponsor of terrorism. That would be negotiating with terrorists. So it's stuck in this vague place, and it expects people to just play along and go along with it and say that, we tried, but these sides just don't come to a conclusion. There isn't a coherent ceasefire policy. The ceasefire that is in place is 1701 from the United Nations Security Council for the Lebanon-Israel war to stop back in 2006. It's still there. That resolution is there, but Hezbollah chose to violate it. Israel attacked in retaliation, and here we are right now. So if there's any place that the two sides can go back to, perhaps it would be that Security Council resolution ultimately.
That Security Council resolution at the end of the day could be vetoed again by the United States of America, because this is precisely what the United States has done, give diplomatic cover to Israel even at the United Nations Security Council. The question is this, in the...
Mohammed.
Yes,
no,
yes, Susan,
Mohammed. Mohammed. 1701 has been adopted. No one was opposed to it. Everyone agreed. Israel withdrew its troops from Lebanon in 2006. This is not something that needs to be readopted again. So it can go back exactly to that, not a new resolution, the 1701 resolution that was adopted in 2006. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but that resolution at this moment stands flouted, because what we are witnessing is increased offensive by the Israelis in the course of the last 1 week. Now, the way the Israelis are able to actually carry out this offensive is because of the American weapons that are supplied to the Israelis. The Biden administration, looking at its track record of what it has done in the last 1 year, where it has said one thing but has done exactly the opposite of it, can we expect some kind of pressure in terms of telling to the state of Israel that if it doesn't do enough to protect civilian lives, then probably it can expect that there'll be conditionalities that will be put in place for American weapons that are being sent to Israel?
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about it, it's very unlikely that Israel would take any advice from the United States. We'll have to wait and see whether or not the Biden administration wants to threaten Israel in any way regarding those weapons that you mentioned. That might be a way forward. But then on the other hand, it's the issue of Iran with Hezbollah as well. And the United States, at least the Biden administration in these final weeks, has signaled, as has the new government in Iran, that they want to try to reopen the JCPOA, the nuclear talks. So, they take that into consideration as well when they're thinking about their policies in the Middle East. So it's an alphabet soup right now at this point, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, it's the civilians that really pay the price, as we're seeing in Lebanon right now. I just do want to say, just to show that Prime Minister Netanyahu what is on his agenda and his priorities of who he's meeting, he's expected to meet the president of Paraguay, the Prime Minister of Serbia, Greece, and the Netherlands later today before his speech tomorrow.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Susan Tehrani, for joining us and getting us all those updates. I will, of course, come back to you as more details emerge in New York there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.